So quickly, if you want to get the real kind of bare bones meat and potato difference between Keynesian economics and the Austrian School of Economics, the simplest definitions would be to say that in the Keynesian uh, theory of economics, I wouldn't say it's an economic system. Not like Austrian is actually an economic system. It's a description of a naturally occurring economic system, is the Austrian school. So the Keynesian, what you'd have to say is it's an economic theory that is subject to continuous changes based on market realities, uh, with actions being taken based on central planning. So it's pretty simple. Uh, on the Keynesian side, you have your economy centrally planned and controlled, um, at the level of currency. So your credit, your cash, your actual regular workings of the upper echelons of your economy, and your basically the component of your economy which drives your nation's ability to grow businesses to larger sizes, to make future investments, and to aggregate the savings and kind of the gambles of your citizens. So in the financial industry, what the citizens do is they gamble on making more money based on what they think about the economy. And if they're doing it naturally, it's a very effective system for maintaining uh, economic growth. And also, it's a very effective system for realigning an economy based on technological and cultural changes. And that's where you see recessions, is when you have this technology that drastically changes the culture come in, and therefore displace significant portions of labor, or a natural disaster that and human disasters that interdict the regular happenings of persons. So when that's natural, if businesses fail, or significant portions of economies fail, it's a corrective occurrence. It's a natural occurrence. Like a tree's life is only so long, and then it's going to expire. But it leaves behind its legacy and the seeds that it spread for new trees that will be similarly based and yet better adapted for the environment it's found in, based on the small changes over time. So if you're allowing that to happen in your economy under the Austrian school, then what you'll have is businesses failing, but those businesses actually dissolving into new areas of that have opportunity for innovation, and growth in your economy. And when you introduce centrally planned features of an economy that are not natural, you tend to disrupt the system to the detriment of the system. And so the Keynesian school says we can't allow the economy to be subject to its natural tendencies of reactions to the environment in which it exists. So instead, they create an artificial environment for that portion of the economy to exist, which is potentially the most important aspect. I mean, entrepreneurs are really the backbone of an economy. Without the small scale, the direct interactors with the sustainment of your society and growth of improvement of your area, it's pointless to have an economy without that. We'll never be completely automated. We'll never be completely robotic. We'll never see the elimination of the jobs that dig ditches. We'll never see the elimination of positions where we take out the trash. We're always going to have these seemingly superfluous roles in our economies. They are necessary, and in fact, in a lot of cases, the personalities that gravitate to those roles it's very fitting. I happen to really enjoy their work. It's awesome. I don't mind being a ditch digger. So in the Keynesian school, I say it's only a theory because when it's implemented, there is no certainty as to the economic future. There's excessive speculations, and I'd compare it. The allegory here would be the physicist that goes to bed at night and wakes up in the morning believing that we exist in a hologram. I mean, you really gotta have a lot of water between your ears to fucking think that. Oh, the math leads us there. It has to be. Yeah, okay. And there's just endless amounts of subatomic particles, and it's not based on, it's not based on interactions of density in states in the energy states. It's not in the flux density of the energy states, electric, the electromagnetic variances, frequency variances between the forces flux is what you're seeing. I mean, come on, you're just taking different measurements of these forces. So have fun. Let's keep calling them all these different particles. It only exists for a split second because it's at a frequency of electromagnetic flux where it can't exist in the environment it's subject to for any longer than it does, so it degenerates. And it's bullshit. You found the Higgs boson. No such thing. Anyway, back to Keynesian. And how it's basically it's sort of the play. It's the scripting over reality that is incompetent to actually fulfill its mandated. It's the reason it was created. It's incompetent to. There is just unlimited amounts of evidence that support the fact that when you centrally plan an economy, that you set yourself up to have drastic negative impacts, unintended consequences that you are unable to account for. But the Keynesian leaning ideology, it's based in this idea that when you take a group of people and give them an authority, that they can better create results than the naturally occurring forces of an economy. And that sort of mentality is socialist. I mean, that's what socialism is. It says that there is no natural existence that is acceptable for humanity or nature. That any aspect of existence needs to have a centralized relationship to a government. And the description of that government, it would be tyrannous. I mean, that is an invasive government is a tyrannous government, and a government that intends to interact on the direct level, controlling the decisions of an economy, um, is completely stripping the participants of that economy of any of their rights of choice. So they balance it in America with this social engineering in the legislative activities, creating the expectations and role, the exclusive components of the economies, which I describe as monopolized industries, where entry into those markets is very difficult and innovation and quality of products is lacking, and um, the expense is and invasiveness of those industries are beyond what is natural to the market. And a great example of that would be the insurance industry, where through the legislative powers, they've unconstitutionally implemented requirements for average citizens to commercially engage private entities in order to legally travel with the technology of our day. So it's really dangerous when you have this mentality that um, the exclusive group with authority um, does not have any boundary to which they cannot pass when it comes to interdicting themselves onto the liberties of the people. Um, yeah. So the Keynesian economics isn't really Keynesian economics. What it was when he wrote it, he was not an economist. He was actually a political theorist. And what he was doing was trying to create a way of propagandizing economics so that way um, they could be manipulated by the government with the consent of the people. So it was setting up the ability to centrally plan an economy without it being called tyranny or socialism or fascism. Um, but if you just step back from the argumentative rhetoric and look at the influences between the three components of society, which is, government, industry, and citizens. So this trifecta, what you have is a relation between the three of influences. So all three are either being influenced or influencing um, in a relationship pattern. And that's how you define your government, what type it is. And when the government and industry are in cooperation to influence the citizens, you call that form of government administration fascism. It's where the private interest and the authority of the society cooperate to exert influence over the citizens on an average. Um, and some people call it crony capitalism or all kinds of other names, but I think the simpler term, just straight fascism, is better. That's what it actually is. And then you have another relation where the government is influencing industry, controlling it through central planning, and also influencing the citizens through central planning and propaganda machines and assignments and roles and um, housing, things like that. What you see in socialist societies, 20th century. And so that would be defined as socialism. Then you have the potential where you have citizens influencing through free markets the industry. So with voting with your dollar, basically the products that you purchase as a whole of a society drive the economic growth and progress of the society. And then you would have citizens influencing the government as well through the electoral process and during the legislative formation process. And the actual problem identification and strata assignment of government for solution creation, or whether it should just be a problem left for the people to suffer with. I mean, life is suffering, no matter who you are. You could be a billionaire and you have problems. You could be a slave and you have problems. Everybody has problems, no matter who you are, and everybody thinks their problems are the worst. So it's always going to be suffering, unless you're humble. Sometimes people become humble, realize their lives aren't so bad, but I'll never stop bitching about unconstitutionalism in the government. They're trying to lay out a reasonable view of proper government based on Constitution. So I don't really know how to stop when the world around you seems like it's just absolutely on fire. It's not getting better. And you try to do something about it, I guess. So hopefully these videos are helpful. I don't really know. So if the citizens are influencing both private industry with the way they use their dollars and the way they choose their employment or their occupations, it should be entrepreneurial. They should be self-employed and earning a better living than if they were an employee at a company. That should be the opportunity in a free market system. That would be. And if the citizens are controlling the actions of government, then you have capitalism. So I didn't say democracy or constitutional republic or anything like that, but our constitutional republic was designed to implement a capitalist system with the very minimal controls for the economy, because our founding fathers were that insightful and that talented as not only political philosophers, but as economists and true Renaissance men that were very talented in all the areas of requirement of the day, it seemed. So by understanding first, or analyzing society based on three components: government, industry, citizens, and then by analyzing the influence roles historically between those groups and how that determines the state of the citizen, really is what you want to know, is what's happening to the citizen. Is he being murdered and thrown in prisons because of his religion? Is he being forced to fight unending wars? Is he being continuously despotized? Does he have property? Does he have social mobility? So you look at all these factors to understand what's influencing, which ways the influences are going. Social mobility is probably the biggest one to understand. I mean, in a socialist society, you don't have social mobility. You are whatever you were when you were born and assigned to as you grew up. That's what you're going to be, unless extenuating circumstances demand a role shift and the government approves it and says go ahead, which is unlikely. The majority of people are just a pipeline, a production pipeline that is very inefficient. So you have no social mobility. In a capitalist system, your strengths determine, and the market around you determine what you do. You yourself can say, I'm good at this. I'm going to go find an occupation that does that, or I have a passion for this. I'm going to go with an occupation to do that, either by moving geographically or all kinds of different opportunities for your own personal determination that you believe are opportunistic to improve your quality of life. So that's called social mobility, where you can make decisions and succeed in improving your quality of life. That's a capitalist system. But we still have that to a certain extent in America. Really am very harsh about the way our government administers itself. And a lot of people kind of ignore it because life is good. People have boats, or six-pack Joe's got cable TV, and everything's not that bad. We can still go get some fireworks and steaks and whatever else. But the trends in American society that have been happening for decades and decades and decades, and the variations and the shifts in the paradigms based on the conduct of the branches of government and the legal interpretations that most directly interact most frequently with the citizens. All these things, when you look at all of that, you understand that there has been this sharp turn in the administration of Americans' agencies away from capitalism and towards socialism and central planning. And it's a trend that's very disheartening. It's been had dreadful impacts on the lowest portion of the society and magnificent impacts on the upper echelons, although it's a thinning portion of the society that is experiencing such great benefits. But that's what happens when you remove transparency and citizen influence on the operations of government, which is the trending that we're seeing, where we've moved away from being a socialist society and we move towards being kind of a hybrid fascist socialist society, where we see the judiciary acting as if fascists, where the majority of their social influence coming out of the judiciary is based on them being influenced by industry and not by citizens and the constitutional rights that they have. I mean, we just see this evaporation of the expectation that a citizen can freely exercise any activity as a commercial engagement and expect to earn a living, earn property and equities that they can expect to keep. It's just less and less so over time. We see that with increasing repossessions, foreclosures, defaults, increasing limited access to credits, and increasing barriers to commercial engagements, such as insurance requirements and all manners of things. So that's what we're seeing. The courts influence the citizens in a way that drive them to be dominated by industry. And then we see the Congress also being influenced by industry, both foreign and domestic, but as well as their own interests to the most part, where we see their sphere of influence and associative groups aggrandizing themselves to the detriment of the citizens, and also placing those barriers I just talked about onto the citizens, restricting their ability to access freely the commercial markets, which would be their opportunity for success and quality of life. So that's the trend that we have. We've moved away from a socialist society, and we see, away from a capitalist society, and we see a fascist tendency out of the judiciary and a socialist tendency out of the Congress onto the citizens. So it's really been hell. That's why there's riots in the streets. That's what's going on, is everybody's thinking to blame capitalism from the left. And anybody that's got any sort of intelligence or understanding of economic systems and government systems and how they're intricately related. That is the way that you define your government, is based on the system of economics and that sphere of influence that's always changing if you allow it. Where the Constitution previously held us on a path towards more capitalism. Over time, the eroded paradigm, it's become culturally less and less prevalent for people to believe that they should be responsible for determining their quality of life. So we see this shift where people are begging to be taken care of, and the government's moving into that role and doing a very poor job, and now people are rebelling in the streets over it. Or really, it's just a matter of letting the free market economy operate and the citizens actually picking the winners and losers, and the government being of a size that does not indebt the nation. Bare bones. I'm going to be doing an analysis of GDP based on some factors that are a bit different than anyone else uses. We'll be identifying basically the real GDP by eliminating debt, created debt from the number, and we'll be eliminating or segregating out local, state, and federal spending, and whether that spending was on the bureaucracy, materials, or services from the private sector, and also free benefits to those same sectors, whether it's bureaucratic sector and bonuses, the private sector, the materials sector, and overpayments, maybe, and service sector and underperformance and overpayments, things like that. So infrastructure projects are currently some of the worst expenditures that you can do. Basically, every single infrastructure project that Americans undertake costs more than they were supposed to, take longer than they were scheduled for, and perform for less of an amount of time and under lesser quality conditions than what they were intended to. That's really the worst way that we can spend our public dollars right now, is on our infrastructure projects. It'd be very healthy to allow the free market to sort of kick the shit out of that industry for a little bit and get those fat asses to not be so lazy, ignorant, fucking useless pricks, living fat off the hog, high on the hog, fat off of our tax debt dollars. Maybe that industry should get shaken up by a little free market competition and get some of these kind of skin and bones companies collapsed, and some new companies coming in that are actually innovative and can provide the products that the nation deserves at the affordable price that they should be getting and delivering on time, like they could in Eisenhower's day. It's funny when everybody thinks we're so much better because we have an iPhone and technology that distracts us. Not really that much of a benefit in my mind, but when 70 years ago they could pave a road and it would last 70 years. Today we can't pave one that lasts 2. It's hilarious. But way to go, Gambino.